House of the Dragon. I went into this as someone that enjoyed Game of Thrones a great deal. Kind of. My experience of Game of Thrones is not unusual if social media is anything to go by. Like many people, I enjoyed the early seasons of Game of Thrones and spent way too much time learning about the intricacies of this interesting world, to then be severely disappointed by the last few seasons. I went into House of the Dragon knowing that there'd be problems with it. I was just not expecting all of the problems that had come up, and how quickly. The first problem is that it's a prequel, and prequels come packaged with some innate problems that can't be gotten around. These being that anyone familiar with the source material can't really be surprised by a prequel and the directions that it takes. It's no real surprises to offer. It's like reading the last chapter of an Agatha Christie murder mystery before going back and trying to read it again from the start. You already know the butler did it, you know the end of the story. And with Game of Thrones, the end of that story was the disappointment of Season 8. Season 1 of Game of Thrones started out with a bang with the mystery of the White Walkers, and that got royally rogered in later seasons. That bolt's been shot. There's not much mystery that can be put into House of the Dragon at this point. There was also the lingering bad taste left in my mouth from Season 8. But keep the White Walkers in mind, we'll be back to them later. The episode starts out with the former King Jaehaerys choosing his successor. It comes down to two choices: his eldest relative, Rhaenys Velaryon, or his eldest male relative, Viserys. First, it must be said that the sets are lovely. The costumes are as good as Game of Thrones, and there's a long list of experienced actors. What could go wrong? So the lords vote for a successor, and the narrator clumsily pronounces, "Over 1,000 lords made the journey to Harrenhal. Rhaenys, a woman, would not inherit the Iron Throne." Oh, that's what could go wrong. I'm getting a bad feeling about this already. Next we cut to the king's daughter riding a dragon through the skies of King's Landing. It seems oddly dangerous to have the king's only child flung on the back of a large man-eating death lizard, but fine, his wife's pregnant, so maybe he doesn't need the daughter. She gets off the dragon and meets a friend, and the actress playing the princess is playing it rarely flat. They take a wagon along a thin road next to a sheer cliff face. It seems oddly dangerous for the king's only child. Is someone trying to kill this girl? The princess visits her pregnant mother, who's kind enough to explain how women are viewed as disposable baby factories. But the princess is a strong, independent woman who wants to kill people instead. And that's better? We then go to the king's council meeting. The king wants a tourney to celebrate the birth of his... He really wants a son, okay? Besides, they did it in Game of Thrones. The king is also really useless and appears to be an analogue of King Robert from Game of Thrones. Everyone's pretty awful apart from this guy, who's played by the actor Steve Toussaint, who's been acting in the UK shows for over 2 decades, so he's a safe pair of hands. He's trying to counsel them about a threat, and they're all ignoring him. So let's face it, this guy's almost certainly going to be correct, because at some point Hollywood writers decided it'd be a good idea to equate virtue and wisdom with skin colour and gender. This is ground so well trodden that Hollywood writers are writing in cliches at this point. The writers of the show leave very few doubts that they consider themselves to be progressives. It's just an awful shame that what they chose to progress towards is racism. There's no shortage of modern day politics woven into the show. It's not so in your face and subtle as many of its contemporaries, but it is there. Matt Smith turns up as Daemon Targaryen, the king's brother and heir to the throne. The Iron Throne that he's already sitting in, and that is a lot of swords, all pointed upwards. If the king trips on his robes and falls over, he's going to be impaled. So the Targaryens are dying out, and I can see why. They're massively stupid. We cut to the princess and Alicent Hightower bonding, and clumsily foreshadowing a clunky lesbian relationship. So there's some hollow representation for you. And the king is sick with a mysterious malady, a wound that won't heal. So someone's probably poisoning him, because that's what happened in Game of Thrones. I don't know, probably Rhys Ifans playing Otto Hightower and the Grand Maester working together. Smith goes on a tear as Daemon Targaryen, and him and his gold cloak police go through the streets beating people. And it's quite unclear at first what's going on until they later explain that they were criminals, so it's all okay. And Matt Smith appears miscast. They tried to paint him as a leader of men, but he seems to lack the mettle and it rings hollow. They try to paint him as a brute in the vein of the Mountain from Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones did it, but he somehow lacks the menace, and I'm stuck with the image of him eating fish fingers and custard with Amy Pond in Doctor Who. There's another meeting of the King's Council, clumsily showing the dislike between Rhys Ifans playing Otto Hightower and Matt Smith's Daemon Targaryen. And then we cut to Matt Smith's Daemon Targaryen in a brothel thrusting into a woman, which is something frankly I didn't need to see. But they had softcore porn scenes in Game of Thrones, and it appears we have a Star Wars style whiteboard, so we can tick that one off. I also didn't need to see Matt Smith's bottom. We cut to the tournament and... Okay, wait, stop. What's that helmet? Is he going to joust in that? The heir to the throne is going to joust in that. It looks stupid, it has no face protection, it has no neck protection. If a lance slips off of his shield, he's going to die. This is a jousting helmet. Note the neck protection. Note the ridge under the tiny eye slot to stop a massive lance going through someone's eye. Are the Targaryens just sick of life at this point? So Matt Smith jousts against Otto Hightower's son, and blatantly cheats in order to win, nearly killing him, and no one seems to care. Did the writers know what jousts were for? They were to train your knights for a charge. You can't train your knights if they're dead. Oh, never mind, they're just killing each other now, and what's the point in any of this? These are the best fighters in your kingdom, dying for nothing. It makes no sense, but they did it in Game of Thrones, so that's another box ticked, I guess. The Queen has problems with the birth, and the King is told that if the baby's not removed, both will die, leading to quite a confused scene. They seem to be trying to go back to the men view women as disposable baby factories, but the medic rarely give the King very little choice. The show seems to think this is a genuine choice: save the baby or they both die. In reality, saving the Queen was not even an option given by the medic. If the King had been given a third option of killing the baby to save the mother, it would have been a genuine choice. Would the King choose to kill his wife to save a potential son, or vice versa? If yes, that would have made the point that I think the writers wanted to make. Instead they missed so hard I'm not even sure what they were aiming at. We then cut to Matt Smith fighting again, and the fight is awful. There are around 30 cuts in about 20 seconds of film, so it's about the standard of a fight sequence from Halle Berry's Catwoman. So that's another box ticked, a bad fight scene because they did that in Game of Thrones too. It looks like Matt Smith may be doing the stunts, and that may be why the fight needs so many cuts. If Matt Smith and the guy fighting him had gone for full face helmets, you could have had anyone in the armour. Get some experts or HEMA guys, and the whole fight could have been something impressive, done in 1 or 2 cuts without trying to give me epilepsy. Is Matt Smith supposed to be the analogue for the Mountain for this? Because he's not intimidating, and he turns his back on his opponent like a dumbass and got a mace in the spine. I ask again, are the Targaryens trying to die? The Queen dies in childbirth as the medics try a gruesome cesarean. Sadly, the baby boy dies as well. Cuts the Queen's funeral, and her and the dead son are cremated by dragon. The princess says Dracarys, telling the dragon to breathe fire. And Jesus, why are you standing so close? You told the dragon to burn things, and you're trusting it to know to burn the funeral pyre, and not any of the other tasty-looking people standing in a circle around it. The whole royal family is standing in dragon fire range, telling the dragon to breathe fire. Are the Targaryens trying to die? There's yet another King's Council meeting where they talk about how Matt Smith shouldn't be heir, and Otto Hightower afterwards sends his daughter to the King's chambers to comfort him. So it appears he wants to use his daughter to seduce the King for his own power because he's a terrible father. Why is this cliché a thing? Why do Hollywood writers consistently write so many bad fathers? There's more softcore porn because it's been at least 10 minutes, and Matt Smith annoys the King so badly that the princess gets named as heir instead of him. The King tells her about the threat of the White Walkers and how they always needed to be ready. The White Walkers. They already got ruined in Game of Thrones. They don't work as a threat at this point. The long winter came and went in an afternoon, and we know how this ends. If they're a threat, why are you making all your best knights kill each other for no good reason? So Matt Smith leaves and the princess gets officially named as heir. Lords come up in the throne room and pledge themselves to her, so it appears that the princess, a woman, can become queen after all. And Jesus, that throne room is dangerous. It gets worse literally every time I look at it. What parent would let their kids near that? If someone wanted to kill the king, they wouldn't even need to bring a weapon with them. They just go into his throne room and push him onto his throne. God, this is so dumb. The princess gets named as heir, and that's it for episode 1. So what's the takeaway? A lot of money's gone into this, approximately $300 million for 10 episodes by media reports. The sets are as good as Game of Thrones. The costume designers are still great, apart from Matt Smith's dragon armour, which is ludicrous. The music has pleasant reworks of music from Game of Thrones, evoking the show when I actually liked it. It has a cast of well-known actors. A few struggle, but the standout for me was Emily Carey playing Alison Hightower, who at 19 years old is showing acting ability way beyond her years. The show as a whole is okay. It lacks the excitement and mystery that Game of Thrones had. There's some clunky politics in there, but there are far worse offenders in current day entertainment. It's functional, but lacks the magic of early seasons of Game of Thrones. It turns out no matter how many boxes you tick, there's no formula for magic. So, how would I rate House of the Dragon?